Welcome, everybody. This is Divided We Stand. It is Saturday night, the 30th of September. Well, we're headed towards October already. It's around 9 o'clock, and it's deal or no deal tonight. And what kind of deal? It's one of those nights again. I guess we'll find out over the next hour or so. If you're new to this channel, which you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, this is the Divided We Stand channel. David Price and I started this to basically do our thing to try to stop the Republican Party and basically draw a line and say, can't deal with these people. No deal. If you have not subscribed to the channel, we ask you that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are not monetized, so we're not asking for anything, just your subscription. Also, if you're familiar with our Facebook group page, you are invited to become a member there. We have around 1,400 members all over the country and a few people all over the world, actually. So if you want a place to vent your frustrations with the world and the Republican Party, please do so on our channel. And our group page. We really do invite you. So anyway, it again is Saturday night, and if it's Saturday night, that also means it's Dave Price from, I believe, Dave, well, you're back in Arlington, correct?
Yeah, I got to spend a week in Nashville, which is, of course, the South. So I may talk a little bit about that. That wasn't why, it wasn't political. Let's put it like this. Politics was not while we were there. It was for music. But as we all know, politics seeps into just about everything these days, no matter where you are. And I'm sure, Brian, that you said you've been monitoring. I've been looking at it, but I'll turn to you first. Monitoring this situation in Washington, D.C., which, no matter what the outcome is, shows the dysfunction of the American government right now. I mean, that's the clear message. When you have to bring it down to, I believe the expiration date would be 12:05 midnight, like 5 minutes after midnight tonight or something like that. And here we are at 9 p.m., 3 hours before that. And what do we know at this point, Brian?
Well, we know that it was passed in Congress. Now it's going to the Senate. And I guess the sticking point was one Democratic senator was possibly not going to go along with it because it had no funding in the CR, the continuing resolution for I'm trying to remember the name. It was Michael Bennett. No funding for Ukraine. So they were working around that, saying that there'll be a supplemental bill and that Biden can do something behind the scenes over the next 2 weeks should Ukraine need something. But I guess the big thing is it looks like it's going to pass, and it might pass within the next 10 minutes because they are voting. And I guess the biggest hurdle was what was going to happen in Congress between the Republicans. And it certainly looked like McCarthy, he was trying to kind of push it on Biden today. I don't know how the fuck he could do that. But it seems like he broke down and he decided he could get a bill if he got the Democrats. And now it looks like the MAGA contingent is in trouble now because it looks like McCarthy went over the line and he's got bipartisan support. He's got support of the moderate Republicans. So I guess he's called, as much as McCarthy's horrible, he's called MAGA's bluff, at least for now. But only one person is really going to be angry because you and I, Dave, know who's really behind this chaos, this idea that they want the government to shut down, and that's Donald Trump. So Trump, I think, is the real key behind this. I think he's going to be just firing off at McCarthy tonight. And I would be surprised if you see some threats coming his way. That's just my opinion. But,
Well, just for anybody, one of the good things about our audience is they're very politically astute.
Absolutely.
But there might be somebody out there or someone who stumbles across this later. You mentioned the thing continuing resolution. Do you want to explain that a little bit, what that means?
Well, as far as I know, if I could just keep it really, really simple. It's just basically it's allowing the government to continue running while it's in debt until they figure out how they're going to, budget things in the future. They've got to keep payments made, and you got to pay the military, and that's basically continuing resolution. And they've always done it. They've always done it. And when they haven't, it's usually been very, very quick, and they run into trouble when you try to do crap like this.
Well, in my time down here in Washington, D.C. area, can't say I live in Washington, D.C., as I always have to point out, 3 metro stops from the district, but really it's considered D.C. where I live. There's been one shutdown. And of course, no city is affected more than Washington, D.C. and its environs because of the amount of government workers. I mean, by far, government is the number one employer. And what makes it, I don't want to say interesting, because you're talking about people's lives, but you and I could be in the same office, and one of us could be working and one of us could not, because they have jobs that are deemed necessary and jobs that are deemed not necessary. Well, that's kind of reassuring if you're in a job that's not necessary. Hey, Veg. I'll give you an example. It really struck me during the last shutdown. Went to the Kennedy Center, and the Kennedy Center could be open during the day and closed at night. Here's why. Volunteers staff the gift shops, and therefore they could be open because they don't receive government funds. But government funding does go to the evening program, so they could not even show anything they wanted to do. They had to cancel everything for a period of time. It gets rather chaotic. But I think the big thing is, for those of us, it shows there's 2 things. I think there's 2 messages. One is American government is dysfunctional. No
Correct.
question about that. It's divided. No question about that. It's divided along party lines. No question about that. But it also doesn't show the impact that government decisions have on people, directly. I mean, imagine, Brian, you don't get your paycheck. There's a heck of a lot of people who live literally paycheck to paycheck. And I'm not talking about, they're not.
Nobody likes working for free either.
No,
that's a real bummer.
So you've really got this thing going on. Now, you mentioned Speaker McCarthy, and there are really, there are many divisions, obviously, in Congress. But basically, it's Democrat and Republican, right, in the House, basically.
Right.
However, on the Republican side, you have a number of groups, a small smattering of what might be considered moderates, although I don't know what a moderate is in the Republican Party these days. But
right.
I guess they're the ones who don't believe the election was stolen. Maybe that's, the Trump election was stolen. Maybe that's the definition of a Republican moderate. Then you have a long established came out, Newt Gingrich, something lingering from Newt Gingrich, the Freedom Caucus, which was the right wing. And then you have the MAGA group with, I guess in this instance, this time it's been Adam Gates kind of leading the spokesperson for that group.
Yeah,
Sometimes
Matt Gates he's one. I think, of all of them, he's kind of been in the forefront
of this time. And of course, sometimes if you're looking last week, the focus was on personal behavior of Lauren Boebert, and you've got Marjorie Taylor Greene, another whatever for the Republican MAGA side. She was leading the fight not to fund the Ukraine, all right, because she said they're one of the leading countries for sex trafficking and harvesting of children's organs. Now, I assume Marjorie Taylor Greene, of course, she could be talking about, she's so out of it, she could be talking about harvesting the Hammond organs that they have.
Right,
of course, it wasn't.
And who is she to talk about sex, trafficking and things like that?
Well, she did. I guess maybe she does have some reasons. I mean, she did show Hunter Biden's sex pictures on the floor of Congress. It's just, you sit back and you look at it and you say, sometimes you say, what the hell? And then sometimes you say, if depending on the day, it can get worse. And probably it will get worse. Okay. The worst thing that I can imagine is Donald Trump being reelected. That would be the ultimate, right? And right now, I can't rule that out. It doesn't matter. Whatever.
Can I ask you this? I know I'm kind of going into a couple of weeks ago, Dave.
Right.
But can you see Donald Trump being elected in a fair election?
Yeah. And I'll tell you why, Brian. I think sometimes, we all live in these little echo chambers, and we don't really see, like, how many conservative friends have you invited over to your house? How many conservative friends do you have? I don't have many.
No, I mean, I can say hello to people.
No, but
I
I'm saying,
can work with them, but I cannot be friends with them. I can't be friends. I can't be a cousin of my cousin because I cannot deal with him.
And so basically then we form these, like, Divided We Stand is a very liberal page, is a very liberal YouTube, Facebook show. In fact, if anything, we're a little bit to the left of the left most times. Gary has a point. It would be reimbursed, and that's
right, but it's not in hand, and there's a big difference. The psychological feeling.
Yeah, I think, and again, it's just the idea: what is Congress supposed to do? Make laws and do the budget, and they can't do that. They're just too divided to do that. Oh, Sandy, I'd say you were lucky, but you're never lucky when you get COVID. I mean, you certainly had a long time, or didn't have it for a long time. Now, this idea of what, McCarthy, will he be a speaker? Who really cares at this point? Kevin McCarthy cares. I guess his supporters and his detractors care.
Because he's under a microscope on so many different levels. I think he cracked today. Of course, he has to lie, number one. Every time he goes on television, he has to lie. Then he has to deal with his nemesis really isn't the Democratic Party. His nemesis is the Republican Party. But he's got to act like it's the Democratic Party. And then you have the American people. He's going to have everybody mad at him. Not only the MAGA folks, not only the Republicans, but the Democrats. Everybody in America, he's going to be the most hated man. So he had to do. In that sense, I think Biden, actually, the best way is just let him take it right to that midnight hour and put the pressure on him, because everybody will end up hating him.
Yeah. And back to the point we were talking about earlier, you asked me, did I see any way that Donald Trump could win a fair election? If I were to talk to my friends, no. But spending some time in Nashville, even though it was just a week and even though politics were not there, whole different world down there, Brian.
Well, what kind of things? Did you see dinner conversations? Did you see a lot more Trump signs?
I'll give you, for example, we were taking the shuttle into Nashville. We were staying a little bit outside, actually at Opryland, and there weren't enough seats to go around, so I was standing up. Judy was sitting next to a really nice older woman, and that when I say older, she was older, because if you're older than me, I'm 71, and she wasn't that much older, but she was a little bit older. And she was sweet and she was nice. And then she said, somehow, Judy relayed the conversation to me. And she said, really nice, somehow politics crept into it as it can. And she said, well, you know what? I don't like Donald Trump personally. She said, I think he has some problems personally, but he was a really good president.
Oh, God.
Okay. Then we're in an Uber, and our Uber driver was, he would not identify the country he was from. It was an Eastern European country. Anyway, he's here while his son goes to college, which is kind of cool, right? I mean, that's a pretty good father. I mean, obviously, come over while his son was studying architecture at Belmont University in Nashville. And we had a wide-ranging conversation, but in that, it clearly claimed it became clear that he did not think much of Joe Biden. He thought Biden was too old. but he thought Trump did a good job.
Mm.
Yeah. So
Gave no reason. You just say he thought he did a good job.
well, he said that Biden. The problem with Biden is taxes. As if there were,
And he doesn't understand that the taxes are
and-
lower under Biden for
Yeah.
the average person.
and gas prices. I thought, how do you complain? It was $3.17 for gas in Nashville. That's cheap. We're $5 above here. But anyway, we've talked a lot about what issues will decide, the presidency, the next election. And they're the ones that people talk about. They're the ones that affect people. The government shutdown. I don't know how much that impacts a person who doesn't work for government, right? I mean, I think it's important. I think we need to look at that and say, look, government just, something's bad, something's broken. Now, you also, I think, I don't know if you were mentioned Senator Bennett, right?
Yes.
And he was, and he think about this, Brian. This is
It passed, Dave, by the way. It just passed. It's heading to the White House.
okay. Well, then it'll be signed, and we got 45 days. It's just a reprieve. It's not a done deal. It's a reprieve, which is good.
But what's going to happen is there's going to be that internal war which is good for us, or is it not?
You know what? I'm gonna go with my friend Gary. We've been in politics since 1968 together. Looks from his comments tonight that he is pretty much convinced that Trump cannot win a non-fair election. But if he does, how about we'll put Gary on the show? It's like a loser leave town. I'm saying Trump can win. Gary says.
I mean, we'll just say this much: if he won a fair one, then you have to think about. Again, it goes back to these states that don't deserve to have two senators. I don't know. I don't see. I mean, I guess what you're saying, Dave, is that Trump could win Georgia, and he could win a state like Michigan, perhaps. Nevada.
They're there. It depends. All right, let's look at Michigan right now. One of the big things, and you never know, Brian. You never know what issues will stick, right? But of course, we know that Michigan is still considered the car capital of America.
Yes.
Obviously, not what it once was because of foreign imports. So, we now have the auto workers on strike, correct?
Yes.
All right. Biden has sided with the union, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Trump did alternate programming. Now, the problem becomes for the historical past, unions were Democrats.
Yes.
They were Democrat stalwarts. They were kind of, what kept the Democratic Party strong. But where the rift came in was really starting with Nixon in the 60s with the idea of the culture wars. Now, workers are often thought to be Republican oriented.
And we've seen that even in where you work, Dave. We saw many teachers, even though they were part of a union.
Right.
Some of them were Trumpers. Or at least in your time, they were Republicans.
Yeah. And
or would-be Trumpers.
Yeah. So what happens is you don't know how Michigan will play out, right? I mean, you don't. In other words, does Biden's defense of the union help?
Well, I think what Gary's saying is like, if he's to win Michigan, they're going to do such a voter suppression act. I don't know how they do that, but it's possible in southern Michigan where it makes it difficult for the Detroit voters and Flint.
And I beg to differ. I think that I don't believe, like I said, you have to be careful with polls. But somehow, apparently, Donald Trump is young in people's minds and Joe Biden is old.
All right.
What is there, 4 years difference in their ages, I think?
77 like to 81. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, 82,
give or take.
Yeah,
give or take. Well, that is it. Now, there just seems to be a lot. This Eastern European, he just said, how can you have that old man running your government? Meaning Biden. And well, Judy, we don't. Why do we believe billionaires and billionaires care about the lower classes? They don't. That's quite.
Can I just say one thing about that, Dave? Sure. And that is, I mean, there are billionaires who seem to care. There are some, like I even think Soros does care. Now he's too old to really do much these days. But I personally think, Dave, that the idea that people become evil when they get a lot of money, I tend to think that if they were evil and they had money, they were probably screwed up in the first place. You know what I mean? They just happened to get money.
There is a question. I mean, it would be interesting in Nashville. Relate, of course. The queen of Nashville, as she's the queen of music right now, is Taylor Swift, right?
Right.
Now, she is using her voice for voter registration. Did you see where like 45% jump in registration among young voters? Now, getting them registered and getting to vote is something else. Taylor Swift is I don't think she's a billionaire yet, but obviously she's a multi-millionaire. So in that case, I think what she's doing is very admirable. I think it's good. I think it's a wise use of the power that you have. Unfortunately, I think too many times we look at celebrity and equate that with virtue or wisdom or knowledge or ability to do, and that isn't necessarily the case. In fact, I think it's often not the case. So, and I do think something that the history books will show, Donald Trump's election, and heaven help us, his re-election, or it would still be called a re-election, right? Even though 4 years, will be looked at as a moment when the idea of what a president is and what a president should do has changed. I think before that, whether it was sham or mirrors, certainly John Kennedy, big JFK, he makes Donald Trump look like a cherub when it comes to sexual adventures. There's no question about it. Kennedy, the list is long. He made no bones about it. He had two advisors, quote unquote secretaries, in the White House. Fiddle and Faddle were their nicknames, and they were there for on any night or any day when JFK couldn't attract someone.
He needed a dictation,
Yeah, well, whatever. So what I'm saying, you and certainly sexual improprieties, if you will, played a part in Gary Hart's inability to secure the nomination for Democrat. I think Gary Hart would have been a good president. I really do. Bill Clinton, was able to overcome, but then Monica Lewinsky. So we're in this, I think we're in this era of changing cultures, changing mores, changing morality. And then along come Donald Trump, who just, again, bad pun, trumps all of this just this week again. I don't know if you followed that. Did you see what happened to him in New York?
I know that he's in a heap of trouble in New York as far as the courts, because it's just a question of how much he has to pay. Now, he says he's going to show up. Do you think he's doing that to intimidate? I mean, he's the candidate. It's just the judge.
Well, I mean, Donald Trump is a narcissist, right?
Absolutely.
And he's a delusional narcissist, as most narcissists are, but he takes delusion and narcissism to new levels. So given a venue or given, a stage, would he consider that a stage where he could perform from? He's certainly not going to be bound by the truth. Okay. This was the most interesting statistic I gleaned. Finances, when they start getting in the millions and billions, they're over my head. But Trump's apartment, in New York, the one he has, his square footage in that apartment is 10,996 square feet. Okay? Mm-hmm. That's been verified. He, however, has claimed and contended that it's actually 30,000 square feet. This is part of the documents that they got, which led to it being over valued by about $207 million. I mean, how does one, what drive, well, that's of course what drives it is he wants to be the billionaire's billionaire. I got that. Yep. Well, Jeff, that's an interesting. So we have to give a shout out. I'm a Philly boy at heart, and there was a meme going around where you had the picture of Jason Kelce and Taylor Swift together, right? And then you had
Travis, correct? Or was it Jason?
What?
I know that she's with
Taylor Swift and Travis,
right?
And then the Philadelphia Eagles have a running back, DeAndre Swift, and of course Travis's brother, Jason, and they had a picture of them together. And it said for Eagles fans, "This is the only Swift Kelce couple we care about." Again, why I think Trump is still formidable. I mean, among other reasons, Trump is a celebrity. How many Americans do not know Donald Trump? Be very few, right?
Unless you're in a coma.
Very, very few.
Or you're in dementia.
And unfortunately, in America, and indeed in the world, but I think not so much in North Korea, because the only celebrity there is Kim Jong-un, is a tremendous factor. So will these legal proceedings, which week to week come, this week it was the financial one, right? Also, I don't know, did you see where Trump came out on Truth Social and claimed that what General Miley did, in terms of
he should be tried for treason.
Executed for treason.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the last I knew, dripping with sarcasm, treason was betraying the country, which in essence means betraying the Constitution, not betraying the President of the United States. And I think, we've talked.
I wonder if Michael Flynn's going to say that about Milley. I would. He might. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Again, and I don't know because I'm not in the military. I've never been in the military, but the military is a reflection of America. It's also a reflection of an American, good or bad, who is not averse to violence. Right? I mean, you wouldn't go into the military if you were a pacifist. I don't think, unless you were drafted. But having said that, I mean, since it's a reflection of America, they too are divided. Yeah, well, that's true. I think, Judy, part of the problem with politics, and some of that,
they might say the wall. That's about it. The wall.
I think part of the problem is that, it really, I will blame the media. Okay. The media that isn't the media, that would be Fox and Newsmax and AON and these others, Truth Social for Donald Trump. They're just one-sided propaganda. That's just the case. But even the old idea of fairness and balance is still being struggled with, in the newsroom. So if you quote Joe Biden, you should quote Donald Trump. That kind of thinking, or we have to report this. That brings us to another topic this week, the impeachment hearings, okay, for Joe Biden. Now, they didn't get off to a very good start. I got a couple notes here I want to pull up. Just hold on a second here. They did not start out real well for the Republicans, but it doesn't matter because we know that probably, even if there are enough votes in the House to impeach Joe Biden, the Senate will not vote to convict. I mean, I'd be very, very surprised given on what we know now, unless we find something new. So they start off with two witnesses. Now, this Republicans starting off with them.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one was a conservative law professor, Jonathan Turley. Now,
what an asshole. What an asshole.
Turley is one of Fox News's legal eagle spokesperson. But here's what he said, which I think is kind of interesting. While I believe that an impeachment inquiry is warranted, I do not believe that the evidence currently meets the standard of a high crime and misdemeanor needed for an article of impeachment.
He's just trying to save his own ass because everybody in the legal field is just so critical of him. The fact that he would even show up there.
Right. But
so he plays both sides.
That's not who I would, if I were doing an offense, which that's not who I would put on.
Right. But I'm sure that's part of the deal he got with them. He's like, I'll support you and do everything you need, but I have to be able to at least say this to cover. That's exactly what Dershowitz would probably say.
Right. And then you've got a person I'm not familiar with who was up next, forensic accountant Bruce Dubinsky. But he agreed. He said he testified. Now, let's just not say, remember, this is testifying, although it is opinion. It's not this effect. Much more information needs to be gathered before it can be determined whether Biden committed a crime related to his son Hunter's business dealings. So never in the history of America have impeachment proceedings begun when you didn't have the allegations already established, right?
Right.
So this is a fishing expedition with taxpayers' dollars to find out if any of Hunter Biden's improprieties, and they were and Hunter Biden did illegal things. Let's not kid ourselves. Okay, there's no question about that. The question is, what relationship do those dealings have to Joe Biden? Right?
Well, see, I think the Republicans obviously know that because of the fact that they lied, Dave. But I think it's that he's such an instrument of propaganda. Again, with propaganda, it doesn't matter whether it's true or whether it's false. It is just the game you play, because as long as some asshole believes it, like Judy mentioned something about how, the poor will just buy into that immigration thing. I mean, the poor at one time were immigrants themselves, and they get them worried about this. Look, I know that the immigration problem is a big problem, but even Democrats care about the immigration problem. The question is, how do you solve it?
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to the Republicans or the Republicans who are anti-immigration, which are most of them, the borders are overrun. Remember that, the gangs coming over and look.
Right, but they're also employed by corporations, these people. And they're also employed by people who haven't cut their lawns.
Well, but it doesn't matter because that's the age-old, they're different. That's where human beings are fun.
And Dave, you remember in Bridgeton, if I may interrupt for a second.
Sure.
I'm sorry for my interruptions tonight, Dave, but I'll forget. But, when you lived in Bridgeton, you saw the illegal license plates. And those of you who are watching from Bridgeton, you look at the license plates, and we know they're illegal plates. You've got plates from South Carolina, Ohio, Arkansas, Alabama. Where are all these states? They're generally in the South. They are all red states. So whatever's going on, these states that care about immigration, what's the first thing they do? They sell the goddamn plates to illegal immigrants. Now, what else is there to say?
Well, there is. And of course, the counter argument would be, all right, one counter argument to anti-immigration would be, okay, I take it since you're anti-immigrant, you're going to go pick the apples.
Right, you're going to go pick, right.
You're anti-immigration, you're going to do whatever. Now, here in Crystal City, where I actually do live, which is now the new home of Amazon Northeast headquarters, there's 9 major construction projects underway, all buildings 22 stories or higher. I would feel relatively safe in saying that 90% or 9 out of every 10 workers are Hispanic, Latino that I see, walking around. Now, who would be working there if they weren't here? And you could argue the building shouldn't be built. I mean, I got all that. But whether it's your food preparation, whether it's buildings, whether it's maintenance, whatever. And of course, you said before, we're all immigrants.
Look, I'm not saying bring everybody in. I'm saying you have to have some border control. It's out of control. We have so many people coming in, but the idea that somehow a democratic issue. This is an issue for all of us to solve. It has to be solved, and it has to be done the right way, and it hasn't been.
Well,
it's almost like they want this issue. They want people to come across.
Of course. Look, I think I feel relatively safe in saying this. The Republican Party offers very little except opposition. That's really what it offers. Very little. I can't seem to agree or find things that it wants to do.
But they do have a clear message, a very clear message. It used to be no new taxes, and now it's basically no immigrants and no new taxes. And somehow they can cloud that tax issue up. The fact that Biden has tax cuts for us, but tax increases for the rich, they don't seem to understand they're not being taxed more. The ultra wealthy are, and not enough, but
what you get
their message is clear. And that I think is a problem on our side.
Well, certainly one of the criticisms of President Biden has been his inability to really articulate his message, right? Now, he was always struck me when he was in the Senate. What little when I see him, or not see him personally, but I mean see what he was doing. He liked the glad handing, not in the bad way. The sitting down, trying to make deals, compromises, that was his thing. Public speaking was never really his thing. No. And the thing with the senators, once it'd be pretty hard for Delaware to vote him out, right? Once he was in. But you're right, Brian. I mean, the Republican message is appealing if you think it's true or valuable or worthwhile. Most experts who are really good in the subject say that without immigrants, America cannot succeed. Not just the hypothetical we're there. We just don't. We're not. Our birth rate isn't high enough, right? We also need. We seem to have a problem with some specialty positions. Certainly. Now it would be interesting.
He's telling half the truth, Gary. He's telling half the truth because he's still going to be there to pull a lot of bullshit. Okay, he wouldn't be there, and I've seen his bullshit. And he's very sneaky. He's kind of like John Roberts in a certain way. I'm giving no pass to Jonathan Turley, nor would I give it to Dershowitz. He can go fuck himself. Excuse my language tonight, folks. I hate Turley, as you can tell.
Good person to hate if you're going to hate somebody, I guess. The problem becomes, Brian, and I think we're talking about that tonight. What is truth? And I mean, that's always been.
Well, Lenny Bruce told us the truth is what is.
But
yeah, okay. Yeah. But the other side of it is they don't know what is, as Clinton used to say.
What is exactly. Would you come back? You've told me some of the conversations you've had with your cousin. In terms, it's like you're living in two different realities.
Right.
You better hope there's some Motown fans out there, Gary, with that last comment. Let me think. Okay. Who do you think is a better crowd motivator, Donald Trump or Joe Biden?
It's if you're just looking at what happens after a speech, you would say by far it's Donald Trump.
Right. And and the problem is that Donald Trump is the better speaker. That's yes. A problem. He comes across, it may be Ritalin induced, but he comes across as this high energy, raving lunatic.
And that really matters. That really, really matters. Is how effectively you communicate. The communicator. Right. And in this age of media, because this has overtaken reality itself. It's so much easier because it's very enjoyable to watch TV. It's replaced going outside. You can play in the video games. It's the alternate reality is better than the reality itself. But now you have to deal with, who plays this game on this screen a lot better, because you have the audio and then you have to do the visuals, and Trump easily comes in first.
And of course this week we also had the second of the Republican debates, Um, Only one of the multitude of candidates running did not get to be in this debate, Asa Hutchinson. So he never had a chance anyway, but he's done.
Right.
But it seemed the consensus winner was Nikki Haley. She is now in some polls past DeSantis. The problem is that both of them are either right under or just breaking double digits. Donald Trump still has a 30, 35.
Like something wicked has to happen to have that change. And I'm saying it can happen, but something really big has to happen.
I don't see what that thing would be other than Donald Trump's death.
Well, look, actually, David Feldman brought that up, is that, if you look at the pressure that Trump is under right now, just forget about whether he's, we know he's guilty, but the fact that he's got so many things coming at him, he may have his businesses in New York shut down this week. He's got to pay for all of these court costs, his attorneys, and then he probably owes Russia so much as it is through the Deutsche Bank.
True.
He's got so many pressures going on that at some point, a guy like him who's always trying to do this and that, as he says, he's indefatigable, but he probably is at the snapping point. I mean, I don't know how you can continue that unless you think he's some kind of evil Superman. I don't know.
Well, you're the one that said nothing ever sticks to him, and
that's true. And he doesn't sleep, seemingly.
Yeah. Anthony, pretty good description. I'm watching some of these things come up, the comments that come up, and of course we're all this page is anti-Trump. We're very anti-Trump. I've been anti-Trump.
Well, I'll say one thing: we were ahead of the game in terms of talking about divided. Many in the very beginning, there were people who wouldn't join because they didn't like the name "Divided We Stand" because he seemed so un-American. Right. But we said it for a reason. Who would say "Divided We Stand"? The point is, you cannot even have a discussion when the other side are fascists. I mean, you have to have a line. And so divided we fall. I don't know. I mean, we have to stay together. We have to be undivided on the left.
And of course, that becomes the contention. I know if you've been seeing recently, apparently it's an internet trend a little bit, talking about the Roman Empire and the fall. And somebody said, well, why are we doing that now? And I think there are people thinking about, the American Empire in its last days. I think you have to think of that. I mean, I don't know where we go. Okay. I really don't know where we go. In terms of the things that we need to do are impossible. We need to abolish the Electoral College. You're not going to have that happen. Okay. It's not going to happen. Given something, unforeseen, which I don't know what that would be. First of all, it's a natural hesitancy not to do amendments. Which we have, besides the Electoral College, I think we have to put term limits. That's not going to happen. Who's going to limit their own terms? Right? Who's going to do that? How are you going to get a majority to do
that? You think Clarence Thomas is going to leave?
We have, then again, the Supreme Court. Are they going to say, oh, please police us because we don't want to ride on billionaires' jets anymore? No. Your senator there, too, it shows another weakness tonight, Bennett. Think about that, Brian. I really focused on that tonight coming in. I just, was reading a little bit about it. One senator can stop it all. Is that really a good thing? And if it is, does that mean 99 senators are not good? Think about that. You have 99 senators, and it can be blocked by just one senator. That's the courtesy they have. Now, because that's what Tommy Tuberville's been doing out of Alabama with all the defense appropriations. Now, you would never, in your wildest dreams, 25 years ago, imagined a Republican senator from Arizona doing anything to stop defense.
Right.
The world where we might as well say Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. Yes, he was, but the Republican Party of Abraham Lincoln is not the Republican Party of Barry Goldwater, of Richard Nixon, of the Bush, of
Or
Trump.
trying to defund the FBI.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, Tommy Tuberville was the coach at Auburn. Okay, Alabama's a huge football state. Somewhat familiar with it because my son, daughter-in-law, and my 2 grandchildren live in Alabama, in Tuscaloosa. So I'm aware of how big football is, but I don't know. I'm surprised. I still think maybe Coach Saban from Alabama, he could beat Tuberville. I think at this point, but he's not going to run for that. But the idea of what makes a senator, and now we're going to deal with that a little bit because we lost a senator this week.
We certainly did.
And Dianne Feinstein, and this is a test. How old was she?
90 years old.
90. Now, again, you can't use one little, we have tendency to just one little snippet of something to prove something. But we went out to dinner, the 4 of us in Nashville, and we were sitting there, and all of a sudden, a couple of waitresses started to make a commotion, and there was a family there celebrating a birthday, and the birthday girl was 102.
Oh my God.
Brian, she was in better shape than I was. Seriously.
So she could walk fine?
She could walk, she's talked. I mean, now, does that qualifies her for what? I don't know. It disqualifies her for what? I don't know.
She's earned more than her fair share of Social Security, I suppose.
Well, yeah, but the idea of it is, with Dianne Feinstein, of course, was between Biden, Feinstein. There are others, but the age question, the
Pelosi, even, I suppose.
96-year-old judge, we talked about last time. But anyway, Dianne Feinstein is no longer a matter of contention. Basically, the eulogists now are giving her credit as being someone who certainly pushed forward the idea of women being successful in politics because she was there for so long. She had already announced that she would not run for re-election. Right? Of course, that's always subject to change. But now is when it gets interesting. Let's look at what happens now in terms of next steps. First of all, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, will need to appoint someone.
Correct.
To serve. It's a little bit over a year until the election is held.
Next election, right?
He has been on record as saying that he will appoint a black woman. I don't know when he made the announcement. I'm assuming it had something to do with the recall vote on him to try to solidify minority support in California. I don't know. Of course, when you lock yourself in like that. So now that's already locked in. Now, he came out and also said he doesn't want to do anything to upset the balance of the election that would have been held, for Feinstein's open seat. So will he try to find someone who will agree to just be a caretaker, right? Mm-hmm. And not run? There's already 3 candidates, including Adam Schiff, who were already positioning themselves to run, have announced to run for Feinstein's seat. So if you appoint a black woman, fine, it's fine. But what does that do in terms of the dynamics of race in California? She said, I'm only going to, and what kind of, you could say anything. I mean, it'd be pretty hard to break a deal. If somebody said, I'm coming in here just to be a caretaker. There was an interesting name thrown out. You want to talk about age now. One columnist who's pretty cool said he had a solution. He said, let Jerry Brown be senator, the former governor of Linda Ronstadt's boyfriend. Bring Jerry Brown back. And it was tongue in cheek, but he said no. He said no, really. He said, who is more knowledgeable about government in California than Jerry Brown? Now, I don't think they will do that. Now, all that plays out in California. Okay, that doesn't really concern us, unless you have relatives or friends there in California. It's a state issue, right? But it's not. Okay, because with Feinstein's death, the Senate now is broken up this way: 47 Democrats, 3 independents who vote with the Democrat or caucus with the Democrats. So that actually gives them 50, and 49 Republicans. Okay.
Razor's edge.
Can't get any closer. Now, let's look at another possibility. Your favorite senator of your favorite state, Robert Menendez from your state of New Jersey, is facing serious
What a piece of shit he is, isn't he? What a piece of shit.
Again, I will go with the standard line: innocent until proven guilty. But I'll be very interested to see how he couches that $400,000 plus in cash and $100,000 in gold bars in his house. That would be interesting to me.
And this is the second time. And his wife is a bit squirrely too.
Yeah. But anyway, there's a lot of pressure on him to resign, including his fellow New Jersey Senator Cory Booker. Okay. Well, if he resigns, if he should, and the indications are that he's not going to, but again, who knows what happens, then that would make the Senate 49-49. But then you'd have the vice president, if there were tied votes, casting the deciding vote. Okay, Veg. Yes. However, there's a problem. It's a practical problem. She is a black woman. You better have a really good reason for dissing her if you're going to try to, trying to generate minority and female support. I think Biden is actually is kind of has to be wedded to her in a way, simply because she obviously, you can't say how much she helped him get reelected or elected. I'm sorry. Can't say how much, but she obviously didn't keep him from getting elected. Not going to happen. Nice. Now even on our page, we got widely disliked, and then we've got Silly, who says, I kind of like her. I think she suffers with all vice presidents suffer from. They're really third-class citizens, right? Good. That's good. Anthony's watching. Now we're endorsing back. Yeah, you and Anthony.
Well, I had one here. I had a
I know.
hankering.
You guys already discussed the fire alarm thing.
Oh, that's right. No, we didn't. There was a fire alarm was pulled prior to the vote, and somebody did it. I guess he said he did it because he thought it was something different, like where you use your pass or something. I don't know. There was one of the congressmen from New York, I think, or something. They're making a big deal about it. They're calling it another January 6th. Motherfuckers.
Well,
Excuse
of course,
my
that's the
language,
other
folks.
thing too. When we label these things, and we do on both sides, that's the part's true. But my favorite about Menendez, I don't know if you've been following that lunatic fringe, but there are MAGAs who are saying that the Menendez case is trumped up. There's nothing to it. That the Democrats just decided to do that to take some of the pressure off of Hunter Biden and the president.
It sounds right, but it's not.
It's not right. Of course, it's not right. I mean, what they do? They gave him $100,000. They gave him $100,000 in gold bars. They gave him $400,000.
Right.
In that, it just seems each week. Okay. What I like tonight is we're getting a lot of back and forth with people discussing. That's much more important than anything we actually say. That's the purpose. Jamal Bowman pulled the fire alarm, presumably to delay the House vote. Menendez will not resign. I agree. I agree, Joey. There's no good reason to have alternative currency in today's economy. Okay, and of course, And again,
And he
even
won't. He
Menendez,
won't resign. He's because he's fought it once, and if he does, then I think it's probably a smart political move. No, a smart legal move for him to stay in. You know what I mean? His
well, it'd be
lawyer.
hard to, yeah. Well,
It's harder
and
to get
again,
him.
yeah, no, of course he did step down from his leading the
Committee
one.
assigned, right? Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah,
then but see the thing is, if Kamala and the president die, then you've got to deal with McCarthy. So that's why you gotta have all kinds of protection for Biden and for Harris. You got all kinds of protection for them. That's just
now
people like Michael Flynn. I could see him getting a group of people, like the Oath Keepers.
that's interesting. Global's idea of term limits is unconstitutional because you are denying the right of voters' choice. I would be interesting. I don't know that that's necessarily true. I mean, I
but
see
some voters keep voting for the same people.
Well, what I'm saying is, you couldn't if say this would be interesting. Okay, where it would come up. Say you had a wildly popular senator. Just say you did in your state, and there was an 18. Most of the times you hear 3-term limit. Say it was what's that? 18 years, right? 3 6-year terms. Then that person won with a write-in vote. Not. I mean,
got you right.
Doesn't. But I mean, again, so I think though the idea of term limits, you have to have first of all you have to amend the Constitution, and the government part of that is not going to amend. I don't even think they're going to call for a constitutional amendment. And to be honest with you, from a purely selfish standpoint, you don't really want, if it was really all about just you and you had your senator in there, you don't want him or her to be limited, right? Because part of that is like everything else. You're a more polished teacher today than you were when you started your first day, right? Well, same thing applies in government. There's a learning curve, but also there's a power curve. The longer you've been there, the more prestigious committees you're on, the more power you wield, the more opportunities you have to advance, hopefully, your agenda, not yourself. I mean, I don't think Menendez would have that $100,000 in gold bars if he was serving his first term. Now, maybe, that doesn't mean you can't be corrupt. I'm going to say tonight. And Brian, one thing I want to circle back to that we did earlier. Did you ever think that the Senate and the House of the United States would not support an enemy of Russia, i.e. the Ukraine?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. It just.
That's a great point you make, Dave. It's mind-boggling.
What?
Maybe the true hatreds or the level of hatred for one thing is greater than the other, and then, or maybe somehow, I don't want to say the KGB, but they kind of figured it out. Like, if you get the right people in power and you give the right message and the right buttons, we don't even, quite frankly, we still don't even know if the Steele dossier is wrong. You know what I mean? You can't really know, especially when Bill Barr was the Attorney General. I still think that whole thing with Russia really bugs the shit out of me. And the fact that people are siding with them right now makes me think that, that there's something behind that.
Well, I think, Trump might not be the only person in government who idolizes the way Russian government is structured, i.e.,
right, top down,
authoritarian that way. And, My last comment for tonight, because the clock on the wall shows it's about that time,
Mm-hmm.
is to Governor Chris, former Governor, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. Now, I go on record as saying I have as much chance of getting a Republican nomination for the presidential race as he does. However, he's still there and maintaining he's the leading anti-Trump. I kind of liked his line, and I don't like this gotten into all these personal attacks. But I thought this one was kind of clever, where he said, kind of said to Donald Trump, and I'm paraphrasing, Donald Trump, you need to be here. Why are you avoiding us? People are going to stop calling you Donald Trump and calling you Donald Duck. I thought that was quite clever. Does it have any staying power? No. And of course, but I just thought that was, that's one of the things you can't. It doesn't mean you can't have. That's not a personal attack, I guess is what I'm saying, right? That really is. It's just kind of a clever way of phrasing.
Quick shout out to Jeff Curry, if you remember Dave from a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Jeff, I believe, had heart surgery, like yourself.
I can empathize.
Hope you're doing well, Jeff. That's frightening to have to go through that. Just frightening, but necessary sometimes.
So I guess as we end the show, the government is going to function for another 45 days.
We think, yeah.
Well, no, it'll function if it functions.
Well, it should function. I just don't know what the
if you call what it's doing now functioning. Yes,
well, I want to say this.
Paid and go to work.
Is where I started with this is that because McCarthy decided to do what he did, and I'm not applauding him at all. He kind of was forced to do it. The one person who doesn't benefit from this is Trump. Trump wanted the chaos.
Right.
And so we have to look at Trump's reaction tonight and tomorrow morning when we get up. And then he'll tell Gates and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert what to do. Vote McCarthy out. I don't know. But something, I think you're going to see that this whole thing with the government shutdown was really Donald Trump and his power over a certain part of the Republican Party. And so we'll see. Maybe it'll be a turnaround for the Republican Party in the sense that if they could do this, maybe they can hold on. But we'll see because, again, this is just my opinion, Dave. But I don't think it's anything earth-shattering.
That's all we have on this show, or our opinion, the opinion of those who listen or view and listen. So I just like to thank everybody who was here tonight. Really, and I thought tonight, like I said, I really liked, and we try to get to many as we can, put them up there. We really want to hear from you, meaning the messages that come in. And I'm gonna let Judy Washington put words in my mouth, and then I'm gonna say adieu after I say thank you. Good night, guys.
Dave, thank you, and good night to you and to everybody. We'll see you next week, hopefully. Be well, and let's follow the Donald Trump, and we'll see what he says tonight. See you, folks. See you, Dave.